All right, I'm here with Rayne Martin of the Helia Collective, and today we're going to be chatting about difficult people. Fun topic. Rayne, I have to start by saying I absolutely love this article because while my sister might argue with this, I really don't identify as a difficult person. I might be delusional. I'm sure there are people in the world that would say, oh no, Libby's difficult. But I was a Midwestern white girl raised in the 90s. Like I was socialized to be accommodating.
Mm,
And I really think that's why I've ended up in the COO seat, where I often describe my job as a visionary wrangler, the one who pulls that difficult person back, or the one that smooths things out with everybody after they barge into the room and make waves. Because I want everyone to be happy and I also want the work to get done.
mm.
So I come at it from that angle. So it was so interesting to get your take on difficult people and how they're not actually difficult. So let's start with that. Let's start with the title. There's no such thing as a difficult person. Can you tell us why you believe that?
Yeah, well, first of all, I appreciate you sharing your story, and it helps me understand a little bit about you, which I truly appreciate. My theory in general is that everybody sort of gets to be the person that they are. And at some level, like who you are is who you are, and we don't really get to attribute a huge level of judgment to that, right? And so, from the standpoint of being a difficult person, it's like, well, that's one way you could characterize it. Difficult, though, comes with an insinuation that that
Mm,
person is in some way bad, right? That they are trying to make people's lives miserable, or they don't care about other people,
right.
or but in our mind, you can be someone who maybe has standards, has expectations, has a vision, and you're comfortable communicating that, and you're confident communicating that, and you want to drive that forward. And that can often be characterized as difficult.
Mm,
And so that's why we don't really like to use the term or consider people difficult or not.
yeah. That's such helpful framing, and it's so easy to be ungenerous with folks when those traits come out. And you had shared in the article, you talk a lot about difficult people might just have a strength that is unmanaged. Can you talk a little bit about that concept?
Yeah, so we are a big believer in strengths-based coaching. Here we use a Clifton Strength Finder. We've tried all sorts of personality and leadership assessment tools, but we really believe a lot in that one. And the way we use it is we talk a lot about the fact that strengths are neutral. They're not good or bad, actually, which is an important concept because when we think of strength, we think of good. Generally, we think of weakness, we think of bad. And really, it's not either one in either circumstance. It's you tend to show up every day with a set of skills and talents that often you don't even have the language for or are not even fully in touch with. So, what we like people to do, including difficult people, right, is really understand okay, what are the strengths that you have so that you can appreciate them at the level that allows you to manage them. Sort of what I call some self hacking, right? Like if you know that this is what you bring into every room, but as a leader, you also know that not every room needs that same thing at the same level all the time. How can you give yourself permission to not use that strength? And a lot of times it gets to be that simple. I have strategic as a very strong strength, right? And I realize that there's some challenges to that in some way, especially for the people around me, because I can be in my own head like, oh, I'm just waiting for another piece of information because once I have that, I'll have path A, B, and C figured out, and then we can move. Where my assistant is like, I just want you to tell me what to do today. Like, I don't really care about a week from now. I don't care that you have 3 plans, but I have a to-do list and I'd like to get it done, right? So I've really challenged myself to, and this is what we say to our clients a lot, you can be like, hey, you know what? I love that strength. You're my ride or die. You're never going to go anywhere, right? I know you're going to be right there with me. You got me to where I am, but for this next hour in this interaction, I don't need you, right? I can give you permission to sit in the back. And that's really as simple as we believe it needs to be for people when they're managing their strengths. But you can't do that if you don't know them. And you can't do
Yeah.
it if you don't appreciate them truly, too.
I think that's the key piece. I think the reframing of strengths as neutral, neither good or bad, sounds like the first step, the first mindset shift you have to get to, and not that we have strengths or weaknesses.
Yes.
Um, in the article, you talked about the thought or fact exercise, and that this came from your own OCD, which you described as waterboarding for the brain. And this is really, so if we were talking before about difficult people recognizing those strengths that sometimes can be difficult to work with in themselves, if you're dealing with a difficult person, what do you do? So this thought or fact exercise I thought was fantastic. Can you take us through that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way that we teach people, what we teach people is a lot, it's based in basic cognitive behavioral therapy for people who know what that is, right? Which is really
I'm a big cognitive behavioral therapy girl. So I know what that is. Yeah.
And it's really this idea that, like, hey, our brain, unlike anybody else who, I'm so sorry. Yeah, I'm on an interview right now, though. Yeah, sorry.
We can edit that out, don't worry.
Okay, good. Yeah, my son just came in. That's what I mean about when they're around, you know? So no, let me go back to that. So we inject a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy with this idea that, like, we are special as humans in that we have a brain that allows us to think and be thoughtful about our own thoughts, right? And a lot of times when we're struggling with someone who might exhibit difficult strengths, right, really what we're doing is we're making an interpretation of their behaviors, right? So what we teach people to do is to understand first and foremost, this is how it works, how are you feeling? Because that's usually the thing people can access first before a question of, like, what are you thinking? People are like, well, what do you mean? What am I thinking? Right? But it's like first, how are you feeling? And then, okay, what are the thoughts that you're having about this situation that's helping to make you feel that way? We're very clear to not dismiss the fact that the feelings aren't valid, because they are, right? And to say more than one thing can be true. It can be true, perhaps, that person is doing these things that your brain is telling you they are, but it's also possible that they're not. And you get to choose which narrative that you live in, right? And which one is most helpful to you in your job and what you need to do as a leader, right? And so that's how we support and really challenge people around that issue of thinking more deeply about their thoughts and their emotions and how they show up in these situations.
Can you give an example of what you were talking through that process where someone is having a thought about someone else's behavior and it's like, is that really happening or is that your interpretation? What would that look like in real life?
Yeah. So as an example, so in the Strength Finder tool we use, there's 4 domains, and one is in the influencing domain. And a lot of people who have high strengths in influencing are considered intimidating, right? It's 10 out of 10 people I talk to that have that characteristic, they'll be like, oh, I've referred to as being intimidating in my life, right? And one of those strengths is communication. And one of the things about communicators that can sometimes be a challenge to others is they talk a lot. They're actually good at speaking, they're good at communicating, but they have the need to speak a lot. It's just part of their strength, right? So unchecked and unmanaged, what someone could interpret in a situation like that is, this person doesn't care what I think. They don't care what I think because they're talking all the time, right? And so
And that spirals too. They don't think I'm valuable. They don't respect my work. They don't respect me, right?
100%. Those are what I call the R-rated thoughts, right? The G ones are the ones that often come out. It's like, oh, they don't care what I think, but really they're going deeper and deeper and deeper in the thought patterns too. This person really doesn't value me. Right? So in that example, what we would do is help someone understand the emotion they're experiencing in that action, right? And maybe they're experiencing an emotion of sadness, maybe they're experiencing anger, right? Maybe they're experiencing inferiority, right? So what is that? And then it would be, okay, what are the thoughts that you're having? And it would be what we just named, right? What are the behavior? Well, the behavior, what's the fact, right? Because the fact and the thought being different is what's really important here. The fact is that person talks a lot. That's the fact, right? And so in that world, the person that we're working with, we get to offer them the 4 challenge questions, and this is in the article, right? Is that thought helpful to you? Is that thought representative of all the positive things that could be at play here? Is that something you would tell a friend, right? To think necessarily, right? So in that situation, that's how we would help the person who might feel this way. When we're working with the leader, what we would do is have that leader understand that, hey, we know you're really good at this thing. It's gotten you where you are, but let's interrogate where it is that being that way has created challenges for you as a leader, right? And ideally, we would work that leader into understanding that, hey, you being who you are actually has the ability to create the impression that you want to be dismissive of other people's thoughts. And I'll tell you, 8 out of 10 times, just the realization itself is enough for most leaders to change their behavior around it. So that's how you would work it on either end, the leader themselves and the person who's having the behavior, having emotions about the behavior.
Well, thinking about how folks change their behaviors in response to realizing the impact they're having, you shared a story when you were at the Chicago Housing Authority that you had a critic, or I'm guessing someone who thought you were a difficult person, that you eventually won over. What component of that was behavioral change, or how did you win them over?
Yeah, so in that situation, what I was able to do is really dig into my own strengths and leverage my strengths, which is also a concept we work on a little bit different than the article, but also something we work on a lot with leaders, which is like, once you know what you're good at, how are you truly leveraging it very strategically to what you do really well? So in that case, I have a lot of relationship skills. I'm what's called a relator in my top strengths. And so realizing that there were very legitimate reasons why someone would be challenged with both my existence and my behavior in a role, I decided to lean heavily into the relationship building strength and say, look, my priority right now is to use that strength to help with this key relationship. Now you have to do it authentically, because you can't go around manufacturing fake relationships just to move people, right? But that's an example where I was really able to leverage a strength.
Interesting. That's great. Let's say somebody watching this suspects that they might be the difficult one in a work equation that they're dealing with. What is the first thing that they should do tomorrow?
Yeah, tomorrow. That's a good question. I'm going to tell you my gut, and then I'm going to tell you what's probably the more appropriate answer.
Okay, great. I love that there are two.
What more people would consider the appropriate answer. My gut says first embrace it, that's who you are. That's what I really want people to do first, because changing behavior first has to come with truly accepting where you are and not judge it. I often say, look, trying to change your behavior through a lens of self-judgment and a lack of self-acceptance is too painful. And it makes you behave in inauthentic ways, right? Because if you just say, well, I'm gonna not embrace that there's some beauty and some reason that I'm behaving this way, and you're just gonna change because people think you're difficult, then that's gonna be painful to you, because you're not really going to come from an authentic place about why you're being different. And B, it's going to resonate as inauthentic, which is going to make it problematic as a leader. So that's what I think the real answer is. Now, I think that many people might try to say, well, the answer is to go and, find out from the people around you how they're thinking about you and what feedback you can get. My challenge to that is, don't put that on your people. No one wants to give you the feedback, and it's not their job. Okay, so if you're lucky enough to have people around you to give you great feedback, wonderful, but it's not their job to have the difficult conversation with you to manage who you are. That's your job to figure out. So might be a little dissatisfying with those answers, but that's really what I would say in a coaching scenario.
Well, I'm thinking of saying, like, this phrase, embrace that you're the difficult person, doesn't mean that you can say, this is me, forget you guys, deal with it, or move
100%.
on. That's not what embracing it means. It means don't hate yourself for being difficult, accept that, and then take steps to change your behavior, but don't put it on the folks around you.
And embrace that there is some ways that you behave that are difficult for people, right? And embracing it doesn't mean be an asshole. It just means that, like, there's a reality to that. Like, yes, I am this person, right? A lot of why the challenges happen in the first place is because people aren't accepting that there's a reality to that scenario. you know.
You're just fighting the fact that, no, I'm not difficult because X, Y, Z.
Yeah, because I'm not difficult because I have a big vision, or I'm not difficult because, because I have a sense of urgency. It's like, well, no, I actually am difficult to deal with,
Yeah.
right? And then, because you can't change it unless you realize that there's something to change, too.
Interesting. I could talk about this with you for 30 minutes, and I've got, or hours, I should say, and I've got scenarios and different people I want to ask you about in my life. But what I really like to end on is something I read in the article you shared the first time we chatted, was that your mission as a coach is not just to help people like do better and feel better in their work, but it's you'll say this better than me, but something about how you can push people who are in a position of privilege to help others. Can you just say more about what brings you to coaching and why you do what you do?
Yeah, so I grew up in a very small, very rural area where we got what I call radically undereducated. And, I do what I do because I have friends, Tanya, Erin, Amanda, that I've known since I was 5, who I knew when we were 12, the dreams that we had were going to be very difficult to achieve. And it just really pissed me off, honestly, mainly for my friends. And that mixed with the fact that I have a mother who struggled to really believe in herself made me want to have a role and have a company that is about teaching people that they are valuable, they are amazing, they are skilled, and then to go out and use those superpowers to make the world better for the people that don't have the same access to the seats that they have. And that leadership is a right, it's a responsibility. That's what I really mean, right? It's a responsibility to truly do the right thing that's going to make a difference for people. And I tell my clients, look, I do love you. I do. I mean, I have a lot of love generally for people. And I do that because I want you to see who you are. But I do expect that you go out and make the world a better place because of the privilege that you have to be in the role that you're in.
I love that. I want to be your client, Rayne. This is so motivating.
Come on.
Thank you for sharing your wisdom with the Helia Collective and everyone that reads. And I'm sure we'll be hearing more from you. Thanks so much, Rayne.
Thank you. Thanks for having this space. I really appreciate it.